everybody. Bienvenidos a todos. Vamos a tener hoy una conferencia de prensa para ayudar con los vendedores ambulantes que están aquí asemblados. We're here to have the street vendors hear from you and give them a voice about what they're experiencing. I want to say that we have, my name is Cynthia Anderson. I'm an attorney. I work with the National Lawyers Guild. Rebecca is over there, Brown on the staff. And Sergio, you're going to introduce yourself too. And where's our inclusive action representative? Right here. There you are. Come over here. I just want you to know who all the players are today. They've been working hard on behalf of the street vendors. First, we're going to hear a few words from Dulce, and Chelsea from the Lawyers Guild will help translate. Dulce. Okay.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Dulce. Dulce.
¿Dulce tu apellido?
Sánchez.
Gracias.
Hi everyone, my name is Dulce Sanchez.
Yo nada más pido que se acabe esto, porque yo he sido arrestada, correteada y esposada por la policía. Entonces estoy pidiendo mis derechos porque nos tratan como si fuéramos unos perros, no nos tratan como humanos.
I'm just asking for this to end. I've been arrested, chased, and treated like a dog, and this needs to end now.
He sido correteada, arrestada, me han quitado hasta mi mercancía. Yo tengo permiso para vender y aún así me siguen correteando, me siguen quitando mi mercancía. Ya son 2 veces las que me han correteado y me han arrestado.
They've chased me, arrested me, and stolen my things. This is the second time this has happened now, and this needs to stop.
Mi nombre es Israel Hernando, yo soy vendedor aquí de Santa Mónica y esta persona, policía, es muy malo con nosotros. Yo ya fui arrestado, mi niña me la ha golpeado, tiene 13 años mi niña y te quita las cosas, te grita, es como racista y la verdad pues queremos nuestros derechos.
They've attacked my daughter, they've taken my things. This needs to stop now. There is racism within the police that makes this happen.
Es todo.
Thank you very much. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Carmen García. Yo soy vendedora ambulante de aquí de Santa Mónica y estoy hoy protestando por mis derechos que tengo como vendedora ambulante. Y especialmente quiero hoy decir que el oficial Hollowell me parece a mí un oficial racista, discrimina mucho a las personas. Porque... Hi everyone, my name's Carmen and I'm a street vendor here in the city of Santa Monica. We think Officer Howell is discriminatory and racist, which has caused this to happen. Ellos llegan, cada día te avisan diferente cosa y no vienen y te dicen, ¿no? Tal fecha, si no haces esto, te arrestamos, te quitamos tus cosas. Especialmente a mí hace unos días me arrestaron. Yo iba caminando con mi carrito cerrado. Les insistía yo una y otra vez que yo estaba cerrada, ¿no? No tenían derecho, me forzaron, me lastimaron. Él casi fracturó mi brazo, me estaban lastimando. Yo reaccioné, sí, reconozco que reaccioné, pero insisto, el oficial Hollowell es discriminatorio y muy racista y queremos que nos dejen trabajar tranquilos. A few days ago, I was arrested while street vending and they confiscated my possessions as well as nearly fracturing my arm. Officer Howell is part of this and needs to be held accountable. This can't go on for any longer and we deserve rights as street vendors. Ahorita nos sentimos amenazados porque nos persiguen como si fuéramos delincuentes, como si fuéramos criminales. Cuando a esas personas no les hace nada, nosotros por simplemente estar ahí puchando un carrito de comida, nos persiguen. Ustedes pueden ver en los videos que ellos mismos suben en las redes sociales, nos persiguen como 20 policías detrás de una sola persona, con unos carritos de elotes, de frutas, que no podemos hacer nada. Ellos abusan del poder que ellos tienen, y es lo que puedo decir ahorita.
These officers abuse their power, and there's about 20 officers chasing after one street vendor with their cart. It's not fair and it's not just, and we deserve our rights to be protected as street vendors.
Soy Luis Pedrosa. Antes que nada quiero decirles que todos los compañeros vendedores que están aquí no son criminales. Somos vendedores, venimos a trabajar y a ganar el sustento de cada día. Para los vendedores de comida, yo les pido que formulen unas reglas mejores para que ellos puedan seguir trabajando, ejerciendo su derecho de trabajar y de ganar el sustento de día a día. Que no sean tan estrictas, que les permitan calificar para que ellos puedan seguir trabajando aquí en Santa Mónica. Somos parte del grupo de la sociedad y venimos a trabajar, no venimos a robarle ni a quitarle el pan a nadie.
Street vendors deserve access to be able to street vend without fear of reprisal from the police. We're not doing anything but making a living for ourselves, so we deserve protections from the police and to be able to street vend without fear of harassment or violence.
And a very important point he made, he said, we are not criminals. And what's happening in Santa Monica is the police are using any pretext to charge vendors with misdemeanors. They're dragging them into court, and they're getting what are called stay-away orders. Those orders say you must stay away from any commercial vending area in Santa Monica. And so essentially they're banned. I'll talk a little bit about the racial profiling that's going on in Santa Monica. We have vendors who are not vending, they're driving into a parking lot with their stuff, and some have been stopped for unloading their vehicles in a parking lot and charged with having tinted windows on their cars and given a misdemeanor ticket. Well, I live on the west side, everybody has tinted windows. These vendors, it's a pretextual stop. Other issues that are occurring is vendors are routinely chased by law enforcement 2 blocks. A couple vendors fell, injured themselves, were taken by ambulance to a local hospital. So there is racial profiling by Santa Monica PD. This must stop. The vendors have some demands about how changes can be made, and they'll talk about that. But first I want to introduce Sergio Ramirez from Collective Power, Community Power Collective.
Hi everybody. I'm gonna take the mask off really quickly. First of all, my name is Sergio Jimenez. I'm a community organizer with Community Power Collective and the LA Street Vending Campaign. What occurred last week, not too far away from here, is a result of a broken system that has historically punished for the criminalization of working class people of color, and a policy that rewards punishment versus outreach, education, and finding solutions. The video and images of a caravan of enforcement agencies targeting food vendors is part of a policy to continue sowing fear into these communities. While many vendors whose fruits were confiscated and thrown in trash bags had permits, the current food laws make it illegal for them to cut fruit, the desired requirement of the client. It did not matter that they had a posted permit on their carts. For many food vendors, the pathway to legalizing their food carts isn't easy. In fact, the laws and enforcement add to the hardships and the complex nature of the permit. Many vendors can't even start the permit process because of the high cost of a cart and a code that isn't friendly to their needs. And Santa Monica city officials know this. That's why on January 11th, the city council voted to pass a resolution making changes to the California Retail Code, which currently sets limits and criminalizes food vendors by denying them a pathway to fully establish their micro businesses as legal entities. Yet city officials reverted back to a failed policy of enforcing and criminalizing vendors. We're deeply concerned also by the reports of Senator Allen, who represents Santa Monica and is considering introducing legislation that would introduce criminal penalties for sidewalk vending. We know that adding and encouraging more enforcement doesn't help, nor has it ever been the solution. Adding a misdemeanor charge that could potentially send a fruit vendor to jail for 6 months with a $1,000 fine and jeopardizing their chances of applying for residency, citizenship, or simply to buy a home will result in the destruction of a vendor's livelihood and separate families. And all because a vendor chose to sell fruit on a sidewalk in Santa Monica, LA, or in the entire state of California. Food vendors deserve to work with a program that allows them to flourish, that provides opportunities versus citations, that educates versus restricts, that rewards them instead of criminalizing them. Since 2018, with the passing of SB 946, that legalized vending, in California, food vendors have not had the opportunity to reap the fruits of a law that gave them access to public sidewalks and a pathway to become micro businesses equal to any business in California. They have known limits, punishments, confiscation, repression, and their investments thrown in trash bags, when food insecurity is not part of our trauma and a basic survival. We need to put an end to this type of community trauma. Vendors seek legality, but it is the role of the city and the lawmakers to assure that vendors are given the proper tools to succeed. Officials need to stop thinking criminalization is the solution, because historically it has never been the solution. We as a campaign acknowledge these errors, these limitations, and this punishment, and we are officially, in the next week, will begin a new stage of resistance with a statewide campaign that seeks to amend the California Retail Food Code in order to modernize the food code to allow the food vending industry to obtain the proper permits, facilitate the manufacturing of a wide array of carts, and provide a clear pathway to work within the law. With active support and leadership of statewide vendor leaders and organizations who understand that the food system code is in need of a makeover, we seek to remove barriers in the California Retail Food Code that currently criminalizes vendors in order to never repeat the violent and traumatic incident that led us to this gathering. Thank you.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I just want to say, after speaking to the vendors, they have a series of demands, and I'll just say what they are, and then we'll answer some questions. And we have a lawyer also from Public Counsel here, which is a legal assistance group that's working on these issues at a state level. And Katie is here, McKeon, and she'll come forward and answer questions, any technical questions. So the vendors want stop the violent, racial, aggressive enforcement tactics by Santa Monica PD, open up spaces for the street vendors near the beach and around the pier to sell safely, dismiss all the pending misdemeanor cases that are in the court system, and stop charging excessive fines, $800 to $1,000 fine for street vending. And instead of funding an aggressive and expensive law enforcement task force, give the funds to a local nonprofit, hire a community organizer to work with the vendors so they have a voice in Santa Monica about how they are treated and regulated. Katie, do you want to come up here, answer any technical questions? I want to acknowledge too Rudy Espinosa from Inclusive Action, if Rudy wants to come up and answer any questions too. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So have you addressed the one particular officer at Santa Monica?
Yes. Officer Hollowell is the officer that we've made repeated personnel complaints about how he manhandles the vendors, how he tells them, don't speak Spanish, don't you speak English, and arrest them on any pretext. And he sort of aggressively tries to get people pissed off.
But did you address it with the police?
Yes, and I have. So we've gone, a couple days ago, I gave a litany of our complaints. I have a whole book full of them about one particular officer. They said they'll look into it. I talked to a captain, but we've also been talking to various higher-ups in Santa Monica PD for a number of months about this officer. Another citizen who saw the video of Dulce being chased sent me a long litany of his efforts to get Santa Monica PD to look at Officer Holloway with no success. He's still out there in the field. He'll be out there this Sunday, no doubt, arresting and harassing unless Santa Monica reins him in. Those are the demands. If there are questions, yes.
Yeah, what is the code or the ordinance from the city regarding being a street vendor? What do they have to go through to get a license and whole thing?
Okay, I do know that.
Okay.
What do they have? They have to go through, first of all, people are aware it's almost impossible to get a license to sell food from the health department. There are onerous requirements to get a cart. In Santa Monica also has rules, and the permit process is very onerous. And now, as of a couple of months ago, Santa Monica passed even more ordinances to criminalize vendors. You can't have trash on the ground. You can't have oil spill from your cart. That's reasonable, but provided a trash bin then, help accommodate these worthy entrepreneurs as they do business, and they're not doing that. They passed the ordinances to criminalize them.
How many arrests have there been?
Oh, I've handled maybe 5 arrests, but there have been more than that I didn't know about, that people have come forward and told me about. But we need to. The charges sometimes are battery, assault, resisting arrest. If a vendor runs away from an officer, that's resisting. So, and then we have one officer who purposely gets in people's faces, officer, I won't say his name again, and antagonizes them. So one vendor was arrested for just putting up her phone, and as he grabbed her and almost broke her finger, and she spoke earlier. So those are and then they're also charged with having tinted windows and having trash on the ground, different various charges, misdemeanors. There are also administrative citations given for vending, and those fines can go from $800 to $1,000. And so we're running a free legal clinic next Saturday in a local church, and we're going to help the vendors reduce their fines.
We just have a big immigration problems.
Yes.
When you have a record, how you
It's
help
terrible.
them?
It's
Yeah.
terrible. So I've been talking to the city attorney in Santa Monica saying, look, don't put these charges on people. Let's do diversion. Let's do a program where you don't get charged, but you go to counseling and they help you comply with any rules. They won't do that. They will not do pretrial diversion in Santa Monica. In LA, they will if someone has an immigration issue and it's a minor misdemeanor. Not Santa Monica. The reason is they want those stay away orders. You have to stay out of Santa Monica, and then maybe we'll consider something like not charging you. So that's the problem.
It's like Santa Monica Hills now.
It's like Santa Monica Hills.
How many of the people who were shut down had permits?
A number of the fruit vendors last Sunday who had all their fruit confiscated, they all had permits, the majority. But the issue of why Health Department in Santa Monica took their carts or confiscated their fruit, did not take their carts, was because they were cutting their fruit on the cart and not in an approved commissary. Katie, you can talk about that, those impediments, but that was the problem. They weren't cutting the fruit in a Health Department approved commissary. It costs about $500 to $1,000 a month to rent a space in a commissary to cut the fruit hygienically. That's why their fruit was confiscated. Yes, last weekend. Any other questions here? Any other questions? Yeah.
So, do you have any evidence that shows that there's a directive or campaign from the city to the police department to go ahead and enforce these?
Yes, there's evidence. Yes, because they passed an ordinance, and that's all documented and in writing on 3 new criminal charges for vending, for doing certain things while vending. So that's some evidence. Tell me further what you're driving.
On a side note, are you also claiming that there are certain officers from the department?
Yes, we are.
That are actually harassing and targeting the street vendors, or are you talking about the whole department?
No, there's some particular officers who are particularly egregious with their aggressive conduct, and one of the speakers spoke here today, Dulce, and what she described was one particular officer was stopped her for a few weeks ago for not having a permit that he could read the letter clearly. It was a little blurred, and he said, "You can't sell here, I can't read your permit." She goes home and gets the permit, but he comes back and says, "You're not a cooperative person, I'll get you." Well, what happens? Look at the video on the press release. She was arrested, taken to jail, $20,000 bail put on her for the incident that occurred last Sunday. And that's, that link is in the press release. So yeah, there are particular officers who are after the vendors, yes. So any other questions? All right, well, thanks everyone. Please get the word out. We appreciate. Gracias a todos por venir. Gracias.
Bueno, compañeros, buenas tardes de conocerlo. Mi nombre es Caridad Vázquez y quiero presentarme porque yo soy la líder de la campaña. Antes nada, aquí estoy porque estoy muy enojada por todo lo que están haciendo con nosotros. Hostigamientos, criminalización, no. Por eso se ha luchado 12 años para estar vendiendo legalmente. Yo no sé por qué se están abusando de nosotros que vendemos. No es justo. Tantos años que tenemos vendiendo para que yo escuche que todavía nos están criminalizando, que a mis compañeros me los están arrestando. En eso no quedamos ahora que se hizo la legalización. Queremos respeto por nuestro trabajo. Hay mucho hostigamiento. Nosotros sabemos a vender. Hacemos taxes. ¿Cuál es la diferencia? Que lleguen y nos quiten nuestras cosas. No nos regalan lo que nosotros compramos. No es justo. Queremos justicia. Que nos dejen de estar hostigando. Ya es justo. 12 años. ¿Para qué? ¿Para qué? ¿Para que sigan hostigando y criminalizando a nosotros? Pues no. Se luchó. Tocó puertas. Lluvias, tormentas y seguimos en lo mismo. Compañeros de aquí de Santa Mónica, tenemos voz. No hay que quedarnos callados. Hay que tomar nuestros derechos. No tengamos miedo. Somos un equipo de vendedores y no hay que dejarnos. ¿Por qué? Porque es nuestro trabajo. Nosotros no somos mantenidos del gobierno. Somos trabajadores y aportamos. Por eso vine. Yo vivo en Boyle Heights. Y vine a esta ciudad para decirles, no rajen, griten, no tengan miedo, porque ya no estamos en los tiempos de años que correríamos por miedo. Ahora no, compañeros, tenemos voz y voto en este permiso y en esta legalización porque tenemos nuestros derechos. Que nos quiten la comida, pero no el equipo. Y queremos los permisos. ¡Queremos justicia! ¡Que se escuche! Así, no quiero que se estén hostigando y impidiendo. ¡Hay que luchar!
¿Qué queremos?
¡Justicia! ¡Permisos para vender la comida!
¿Qué queremos?
¡Eso, compañero! Por eso vine aquí. Para
hora de pandemia y que no nos quiten nada.
Eso, que se escuche.
Tenemos permisos, pero que nos dejen donde se pueda vender, no donde ellos quieren. Que nos dejen vender.
Se siente, el
vendedor está presente. Se ve, se siente, el vendedor está presente.
No pidamos, exigamos.
¿Qué queremos?
Muchas gracias, compañeros. Y no se me saque fuerza.
Se siente, el vendedor está presente. Se ve, se siente, el vendedor está presente. ¡Bravo!
Queremos a los trabajadores ambulantes, queremos respeto, justicia, solidaridad, comunidad empower, permisos, sí,
BEC W-A-R-R-E-N, Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N, and I'm a board member for the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce.
What's your take on the complaints here today?
Yeah, well, I can just, I want to, so I'm speaking here today on behalf of the family-owned businesses and the permitted pier businesses that are on the pier, and our 100% concern is around safety. We want to make sure that everyone that visits Santa Monica is safe, and that includes customers, that includes employees, that includes vendors. And so on our wooden pier, it's narrow, and we can't have a whole bunch of people with unpermitted combustible flames. It is too much of a risk. And so that's what the Pier Task Force is focused on, is making sure that everyone follows safety rules that protects everyone.
Are these, I guess, crackdowns, are they happening mostly on the pier or in that area?
The Pier Task Force is focused on the pier and the immediate right outside of the pier, you know, like right as you walk into the pier. That's what the Pier Task Force is focused on.
How do you respond when they say they're being racially profiled and targeted?
Well, all I can speak to is I speak from behalf of the permitted pier businesses and the family-owned businesses and the business community here in Santa Monica. But what we can just say is that our number one concern is safety. And if everyone is following the rules in terms of safety and not having combustible open flames or pouring, oil into the ocean, those are really serious concerns, and we want to make sure everyone is following those rules. And I will say that the city of Santa Monica has had a very long history of supporting street vending. Over 30 years, the city has had vendors, and in fact, there's more permitted vendors in this city than in the city of Los Angeles. And so I think that we always support anyone who wants to start a business, but what we all need is to make sure everyone is safe and following safety rules.
All right.
Do you find that there's an increase in the number of street vendors that are coming to Santa Monica to peddle their food items?
There's a max limit right now on the pier that allows for vendors and street performers. And the reason why that was created is because of the fire risk and fire lanes because of the wooden pier. Right now there's too many, and that creates blocking of other vendors that are permitted to be there and blocking of customers. And if you have open flames, it's just not a safe situation. So the Pier Safety Task Force, which is what the business community also supports, is that they're there to try to make sure everyone is safe.
Is competition an issue too? If you have vendors setting up in front of other restaurants or?
I think it's most of the issue is around safety, to be honest. I mean, we just have to make sure that the pier is safe for employees, for vendors, and for visitors. And there's thousands of people that visit the pier every day, and so there's only so much space. And so everyone just needs to go through the proper process and make sure that that the safety rules are being followed.
So what's the max number of vendors or
sure.
permits that you have to have, right? To be on the pier?
Yeah, because it's a limited space, right? If you're a sidewalk permitted vendor, there's places all around the city that you can vend, right? But on the pier, there's 13 vendor spots and 13 street performer spots, and that was designed, from what I understand, you can check with the city, but what I understand is that based on fire code.
Yes.
And so that's what that is.
Is it first come first serve, or?
There's a process that the city's always had, because the city has had vending for over 30 years, well before the state law. So there is a process for the pier, but there's also a process if you just want to vend any other part of the city. So, and then of course the county health deals with the health permit. Yeah.
So are these vendors also going downtown, or are they mostly just near the pier?
I think that, sidewalk vendors, if you go through the permitting process, there's places around the entire city that you can vend, and there's over 100, I believe, of permitted vendors. So these are things you can double check with the city, but from what I understand, that there's many places that they can vend and serve customers, and I think that's part of what makes Santa Monica unique and special.
Nombre y
por eso tenemos la lucha.
Muchas gracias, abogada Anderson. Cabe destacar también